All right, so I've never wanted to do this, right? Because I've never wanted to become just one of the regular people out there that everybody talks about that is trying to do some kind of solution for the Z340 Cipher, because they always thought that that was the thing to do. My work really delves into trying to find the people who committed the murders and the related technology from Zodiac that I can see in famous cold cases and identifying the real individuals who were involved. But just as for my own, just personally, in order to push back on people who would want to say that the work that I do is not correct or not competent, right? Because of all the years of what I'm telling you the truth has been misinformation, I thought that this one exercise would actually be important, right? So most of the people that have delved into the Z340 Cipher, and that's including Don and Betty Harden, Robert Graysmith, and recently David Oranchak, I believe. Let it go. All have said that the basic construction of the Z340 Cipher was substitution and transposition. For people who don't know what that means, right? So if you're going to do a substitution, let's say A equals the number 1 position in the alphabet, B equals the number 2 position in the alphabet, C equals the number 3. If you just take those 3, right, and you wanted to substitute in a sentence where you wrote A, B, C, and you wanted that to be a code, right? What would you do? Well, you would take their positions and you would substitute the letters using a shift. So let's go with one shift. That would mean that A is now B, B is now C, and C is now D, because we shifted 1. So we went from A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and C became D. So ABC would actually be written B, C, D. To solve that, right, all you'd have to do is shift back, minus shift 1, and then D would become C again, right? C would become B again. And let's do it this way. D becomes C. Then C would equal B. And B would equal A. So what's the solution? A, B, C. See it? So the solution to that, once you reverse the shift, is A, B, C. So that was the message. That is what's called a substitution. What transposition does is it would have been a shift 1, right? Which would have created B, C, D. And then it would have been shifted again so that they're not even in the same position, right? So then you could say shift 1 again. And now you got B is now C. C is now D. And D is like E. Oh no, excuse me. So on the transposition, you would do a shift 1 and it would be D would be where B is as a location. D becomes B in the location. So now you have D. B would go where C is. So now B would be second and C would be where D is. They're not even in ABC position. And that is so that you can't even guess that the original letters were ABC, because now it's DBC. And even if you kind of sort of looked at it, right, you would think that it is completely different than just the straight alphabet. Where when you have ABC and then BCD, you kind of can tell they're still in the same order. And if you figure out what the shift is out of 26 different options, it becomes pretty easy to solve. But then when you transpose it and you switch their positions, at that point, to solve that code that we just wrote, to solve the code after the transposition, you pretty much need the key. You need the key. You need the shift keys, because you can't just look at them and solve them. So transposition is used to remove the ability to just look at a code and understand what it says. And that is called removing plain text. Plain text in coding basically means what you see is what you get. It pretty much is in the position it's supposed to be in, right? And the letters are not representing a different letter. So there's not really a shift or transposition. Someone's done something else in order to create the code, right? So my theory, I've told people, which has allowed me to find real people and real information in anything that the people associated with, or especially Albert Lee Terry Jr., Friar David Collins, using that Zodiac protocol for 6 decades, is that it's plain text, but it's truncated. In other words, you need a familiarity of what they're talking about, and 1 or 2 letters can be the solve. And people say, well, you've got to be brilliant to do that. That's not true, right? Plain text solutions that have not been transposed are done on Wheel of Fortune every day. Right? So I'm going to pull this down for a second. Hopefully this video doesn't get too long or anything. But I am going to go to YouTube real quick, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to go to YouTube, and we're going to pull up Wheel of Fortune. And I am going to show you, so we're going to go Wheel of Fortune Solutions. And I'm going to show you people breaking kind of what zodiac codes are.
Guardians plays a role in my story too.
This is how it works. Check it out. So they got a slash, a via S.
Promise.
5-star restaurant.
Yeah, that's it.
She just solved the zodiac code.
Jose, diamond necklace? Yeah, that's it.
He just solved a zodiac code. Don't tell me it can't be done. It's easy. Watch this one.
$700.
So he's just got an apostrophe and an S.
I like to buy a vowel.
And a certain
please?
amount of spaces.
Good call. There are 4 E's.
And he bought some vowels.
I'd like to solve.
Okay.
It doesn't get any better. Wow. Yeah.
You see that? That's how zodiac codes work, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this top line, and if David Oranchak, Betty and Don Harden and Robert Graysmith are correct about how the Z340 cipher is constructed, other than extracting letters based on some other random pattern and creating a new cipher that they believe was substituted and transposed, which is possible, but I would like to see how you actually knew that, figured it out, and found the key without saying it was just magic, right? If I can solve this first line using the plain text letters that are available to the point where you, me, and everybody else and their mama reasonably believe that what the solution was is evident in the information that I point out, then all of the solutions that decided that all of these symbols and letters were placeholders for a different symbol or letter and were actually moved into a different position also, right, to create an entire message are completely wrong. Because no one is going to transpose, just randomly throughout this thing. And if there are placeholders for another letter, how do you figure out what letter it's a placeholder for? What most of them did is what we call the magic letter, or like in poker or bid whist or spades, you get a wild card. And so they finally get a wild card that they just apply The P can be A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever I need, whenever I want it. So, what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna make this just a little bit more colorful, just because we're having a good time here. Like this one, I'm not actually pointing out a criminal. I'm doing what all these people do, just so we can move on and realize that what I do is real work. So I'm going to highlight this line, and I know what this symbol is and this symbol. I'm not sure exactly what they use that for, but these are Boy Scout flag codes, and I don't need to decipher those to prove this point. So we're going to look at P, Z, U, B, this reverse K, this O, R, and this symbol, the 9, this symbol, and this symbol. So we're gonna deal with this top line. And so I'm gonna give you my theory. So let's just kind of push down, and I'm gonna push that stuff off the screen so we can get to my theory. The Z340 cipher is truncated words. Either shortened or missing letters and vowels. Just like we saw on Wheel of Fortune. So we have these lines separating these three letters, which to me says that we have three words here. So we have P, we have Z, and we have UB. I don't know what all those three people made the P, the Z, or the UB. You have to go to their different solutions, and they'll show the symbol and they'll show what they think they transferred it to. But let's just stick with what we're doing. So I think that P is plan, and that this Z is Z, right? And that UB is U-boat. U-boat. I think U-boat is like that, right? So now you have my solution for those three symbols, or 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Z340 cipher. So I'm going to sign my name to that. And then we're going to drop this for a second, and I'm going to say we're going to go on the internet. And so I'm doing this live. You know, you guys are right with me, so I'm not trying to hide anything. I don't know what's going to come up. We're going to go with Plan Z U-boats. Plan Z was the Nazi Germany Navy's Kriegsmarine ambitious fleet expansion program ordered by Adolf Hitler in early 1939, aimed at building a navy capable of challenging the Royal Navy by 1948. While the planned centerpiece was a large surface fleet of battleships, cruisers, and aircrafts, it also included a relatively small U-boat component compared to the scale of the surface force. Now, I've seen different translations of that. That line was written cleverly. It's saying a relatively small U-boat component compared to the scale of how many fleet battleships were also planned. I've heard that in actuality, that Plan Z actually focused more on the U-boats, and that there was an argument between the brass as to where the money or the resources for building should be concentrated. There was a group who thought that the battleships and the cruisers and the aircraft carriers were more important, but Hitler himself thought that the U-boat component was the most important, and really wanted to produce a massive amount of U-boats. One, because of their undetectability, and the fact that they were kind of independent, where the battleships kind of go in a fleet and you could just wipe them all out because they're kind of cruising together. But the U-boats were individual, separate, that could go out and create havoc and damage, which they did for a long time until the other forces started using sonar and depth charges, and also code breakers, right? The main reason that the U-boats under Plan Z or any other plan in the German army or forces at the time in World War II were finally defeated was not any mechanical technology. Obviously, the depth charges did the job, but the actual reason was that code breakers like myself broke the German code and were able to actually read the instructions for where the U-boats were supposed to be. They would break the code and they would find the U-boats. So they knew that because they found something they could not have known but for what the translation was from the code, that they had actually cracked the code. I never heard of Plan Z U-boats in my life until I looked at the plain text and said, what could PZUB mean? When I was able to solve the right side of that line and realize that it may have something to do with Zodiac absorbing some of Adolf's military planning skills. Not that they were Nazi people, because they had multiracial people in their group, but that they thought in order to fight the government, to end the Vietnam War, and to fight to end or change the discriminatory protocols and rules and laws within the military, that they needed to take individuals who had individual talents and send them out like U-boats to attack certain areas. And Albert Lee Terry Jr. was a murderer. He was he had no problems killing people. And at some point, somebody decided that that was the best way to elevate these coded letters. And that was his U-boat category. There were other people that did other jobs, right? Like intercepting espionage, reconnaissance photography, infiltrating high-level naval intelligence technical information that they used as a potential way to extort the government to start changing its view of the Vietnam War. So the Z340 cipher is like a proclamation. It's an announcement. It's like they took a piece of paper and nailed it on a post in a neighborhood, and it said, "Heary, heary, heary, this is what we're about. This is what we're going to do." So PZUB, right? So we're going to drop that. I'm going to bring this back up. PZUB. Do you believe that there is a significant chance that what we are looking at here excuse me. I don't know why it doesn't want to do that. Oh, right. So we're going to save. Okay, I got it. I got it now. So I just wanted to bring it up. Do you believe that there is a significant chance that this PZUB is P minus the LAN, Z minus any of this stuff with a U, right? Minus the dash in the OATS. So this would be your wheel of fortune letters that you were able to extract. You say, we're going to give you P, you found a Z, you bought a vowel, you got a U, and you had a B. And you go, Plan Z, and the U-boats. That's Zodiac code. So I'm going to do some more. I'm going to do a little bit more. I told you I was going to do more. So now that I did that one, right, I want to go a little bit further down that line. So let's do the second solve. Right? And we have a reverse K. Now I can't reverse it on here, at least I don't know how to do it. Then we have an O and an R, right? Because I see these two symbols and this locked in right here, and then these were letters in a reverse K, the K being reversed is telling me that yes, they're giving us an instruction to transpose it, and it means to move that letter, right? So if it's pointing that way, then does it mean move it that way? Possibly, but since it has this little block right here, I'm thinking they're saying keep it within this area. So if you look at the structure of the Z340, right? It's like a Turing tape. Now I'm not gonna get too technical, right? But it basically goes in one direction, wraps. It just keeps wrapping, right? So if we're in this squeeze space and it's reversed, right? If I push it, it is blocked here. Then this might be a tape within a tape. So the K and the B are actually on the same piece of tape, and so the K is in front of the B, and this is a separate entity because they're both at the end of the sentence. So how that would work is just that if this is reversed, this is the end or beginning of the tape, and that's the end or the beginning of the tape. And so this one piece of tape, like if you were cutting a movie and you were editing it and you said, I want this right here. So it's part of the larger portion, but it's just one scene that was cut in, right? Then if that's true, it's still what it is. It's plain text. Then we would have KB, right? OR, and then these other things that I think are different than those letters. So that being said, at least if I'm wrong, right? My explanation is better than the other people's explanations. And you say, why, Steve? You're explaining something, you're moving something, because the code told me to move it. It's backwards, right? I didn't just decide to move it because I thought it would work. And that's going to be the criticism. They're going to say, well, no, he did that because he wanted it to work. I did it because they reversed the letter, and I believe that this is built on the Turing tape model, that it's just a tape, that the bedrock of computer science. Like when IBM used to have stuff on a tape, it's different now. And that's the end and the beginning and the beginning and the end. Right? So we have KBOR. Now what could KBOR be? Right? So if we're using the Germans' thought process over here, and we're talking about World War II, and these Vietnam people, military people, are using code, and they're hoping that you understand the theme. That's just like Wheel of Fortune. Like it's a phrase, it's a place, right? It's a saying, something like that. Like for you to solve it, they're like, okay, just stick with the theme. So we're World War II. What is KBOR? What could that possibly be in World War II? Well, I'm not going to search it that thin right now because I did before, because I kind of want to get to the point, not belabor it. But keep borkering on, I believe, was the same. Let's go research that and see what that is. Okay? So we're gonna go in here, we're gonna keep coming, we're gonna go, and we're gonna go keep Borkering on Churchill, Winston. I believe that was how he said it. Here you go. So, keep Borkering on and Winston Churchill. The phrase you're referring to, keep Borkering on, is almost certainly a playful or misspelled version of keep buggering on. Oh, okay, so that's what it was. That's why I didn't get it at first. So let me change that. AI is pretty good. Keep buggering on Winston Churchill. Okay, so that I'm gonna sign that. That's Steve Butler's solution for the KBR with the one transposed letter because the code told us to move it, right? A well-known expression attributed to Sir Winston Churchill that reflects his wartime determination. The origin of keep buggering on. The term keep buggering on, sometimes keep plodding on in polite company, was a personal mantra Churchill used at the start of each day and at the end of every telephone call. It embodied his refusal to back down even in the face of overwhelming odds. The phrase was first recorded in 1941 when Churchill, after receiving devastating news of the sinking of the British battleships Prince of Wales and Repulse, told his private secretary, "We must just KBO. We must just KBO," meaning keep buggering on. The context was the immediate aftermath of a major naval defeat, yet the Allies were also making progress elsewhere and the Grand Alliance was forming. Okay, so let's keep that on the screen. Let's bring up our little thing here. Okay, now he used KBO, so we do have a KBO. We could have stopped at KBO, but there was an R. And a lot of times, if you're using this type of coding technique, you need to add another letter or a phonetic phrase or something so that you narrow it down a little bit. Just like a personalized license plate, if it can be translated too many different ways and you really are saying I love Jesus instead of saying, je or French or something, I love like I like myself, you might put like a Christian plate holder around it, with some doves. And so now people understand which way to go with that. So I think that they added the R just to make sure that if you didn't get the PZUB, that you actually did get the KBO R, which is keep buggering on. And so let me bring up the code again, just so that we are familiar with this. So I'm saying that this K flips around, it goes KBOR. So it's the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning, but you associate these four letters. So it could be KBRO or KBRO. Yeah, probably KBRO. So it's KBO with an R. And they put the R in there to narrow it down, or you bring the B back, but it's KBOR. I can't tell exactly how they wanted to move that tape, but I do have the K and the B going together, and then that space is filled with OR, so it's KBOR. So people can argue about exactly how to move that letter when it's reversed, and that's something I definitely need to concentrate back on. But because these symbols look so different and are related, that's why I included the R with the other letters. I could have left the R out, right, and just went with the KBO, but I think that was definitely an accent. So it follows the theme, right, of the rest of the sentence. It is plain text, and the real point here, including that I'm solving it correctly, which I believe, which are things I could not have known but for breaking the code, is that they're not placeholders for other letters, right? They are not placeholders for other letters. And the only transposition I used was because the code reversed the letters, suggesting that I should move it for some reason, right? So that's that. Now, I am going to get rid of that, right? We're going to bring this back up. We're going to take this over here. And I think this is going to be what I call the piece de resistance, right? The one that really kind of blows you away. So I'm going to go to these symbols right here. I'm going to bring that up. And we're going to make this just a little bit bigger, right? And we're going to bring it down. I want you to be able to see it. So I'm going to bring that up, and then I'm going to come down. Right, so we're going to get into that right here. And then I'm going to bring this over. So I'm going to we're going to push this up so that it's gone. So we have a clean screen. And I am going to go out on a limb and say that represents pi. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that is a 9. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's times. Now, can these things represent more than the plain text that I'm seeing? Absolutely. They have letters that look like pictures and pictures that look like letters in order to deliver two messages, right? A plain text reading of the letters, which is just what's going on in the JonBenet Ramsey ransom note. That's how this works. When I say, if you pull up the JonBenet Ramsey ransom note, which I'll do on here for you, you will see letters that look like pictures and pictures that look like letters. You can read the letters. You can read exactly what the text is saying, even though it is a picture. So I believe that this is a picture, this is a picture, these two are pictures, but they're also letters. And so right now, all I'm going to do is translate the plain text of those, although that I know now what I think some of this other stuff is, which I didn't know for years. So we have pi, we have 9, we have a times, a x, and then we have pi. Right? That's the plain text that I'm signing my name to. Let's go to the internet and let's ask the great little Karnak here, what is pi times 9 times pi? 88. Is anybody lost at this point? Okay. Pi times 9, right? So we have pi and then it's next to a 9 times, so this result, let's do it as a proper math function, at least from my generation, right? That was a long time ago. So we would bracket that. So that result times pi times 9 times pi. equals 88. And we'll just round up and leave it at 88. Well, what is the 8th alphabet of the 26 alphabets? 8 equals H. So if you have 88, you have HH, which is Heil Hitler, right? Consistent with the theme of Plan Z U-boats, consistent with the theme of World War II and their opponents, Churchill, but using his thought process of even against overwhelming odds, never give up, thinking that the Zodiac is a revolutionary group that is trying to stop the Vietnam War and fighting against discriminatory practices in the military and in society, right? And that they're basically, like I said, they have multicultural members, so they're not like Nazi skinheads, right? But they're just adopting this warlike thought process of each individual being a U-boat out there sinking the status quo ship and taking now the British motto of don't ever give up even against overwhelming odds, and then using German symbols as part of their validation codes. Like if you look at a lot of my videos, I tell you that their validation codes are like HH and 88 to let you know that it is a valid code. As there's about 5 different things to let you know that it is a valid message. So this is part of the validation and part of the statement that they're making, right? That we're in a world war in order to change society, and this is a valid Zodiac message. So that is the 88 and the HH, which are 2 parts of a 5-part validation. Now, if you don't believe anything I just said, my question to you is, what part of what I just showed you looked forced? The only really hard thing was, did the R actually go with the KBO? Or was the R somehow associated with the math problem, right? And that the KBO should have just stood on its own. This separation of space looks equal distance, so that's why I continue to keep it with it. But if that is the only problem you have, right, then there is a solution for that, but this is a rationalization, and I'll just stick with it. But the R would equal arithmetics, however you spell arithmetics, which was Bill Clinton's way of talking about math, right? So the R is signaling that this is a math problem and that you should transpose that to K, B, and O, and the R is part of this intergroup that's not related. So you would get what we saw, keep buggering on, so you would get the KBO, and you don't have to justify the R, and the R is the signal that this is a math problem. Now that is probably more correct. But these are not placeholders for other symbols. They are plain text, which means they are not transposed. If you have A, B, and C, and then you shift A to B, B to C, and C to D, and then you transpose that by making it DB or DCB, right? You can't take DCB and truly, just by visually looking at it, understand that that's ABC. Theoretically speaking, if you have, a actual message, but it works even at this small level. Now, I could go into a whole different argument, but I'm gonna let it go, right? And I want to show you something that I think is very, very important to show you how what I just showed you is not just an argument against the people whose solutions have been elevated by the government and what I believe to be a cover-up in order to give you false information so that if you ever did run into the truth, you would never believe it, which apparently has been pretty effective, right? Remember when I told you that these things are also pictures, right? That they could have other meanings as a picture, like that could be like a symbol for a landing strip, which would give you a location, right? Like an airport or a military base that has a unique configuration like that. Or it could be what looks like a type of plane or something like that, because they do that kind of stuff. What I want to show you, and the fact that I'm telling you that the people that did this and the man that did a lot of this, right, is connected to crimes 30 or 60 years past this period of time. I'm going to do this last thing and I'm going to close out the video, right? So we can get rid of that, and I'm going to pull up, I have it on my desktop, but let's see if we can find a good version of it here. The JonBenet Ramsey ransom note. And I'm going to send this to law enforcement on the email list that I use, because I think they need to see this. You know, you're not used to code breaking on a local law enforcement basis, and you're probably going to say, well, is this guy telling the truth? Is this right? And you look to your FBI partner, and he's got instructions, maybe, perhaps, to continue the cover-up. And he's going to say, this guy's whacked, he's crazy, why are you even spending time on that, right? And you're not going to know where to go to dispute that, what he's saying, even though you think, you know what, I don't know much about cryptology, but that sounded kind of like the guy's not really bullshitting, like he's just, that was the first straight kind of explanation I thought, but I don't quite understand it. This is where you can go. Right? So remember when I told you that the JonBenet Ramsey note is letters that look like pictures and pictures that look like letters, but you can read what it says? So if you read from here, it says early delivery of the money and hints, and then something that you can't quite make out of is it cashier or whatever, and then it looks like he wrote delivery and crossed it out because he wrote pickup. That, my friend, is a device, right? It is a mental device that works like AI does, right? It gives a suggestion, and the brain automatically associates the word delivery, because we've been taught that if somebody scratches something out, it negates it, and that the next thing that's written may be the corrected response to whatever was written. So whatever that says, and when you see people, they've translated this into regular English, and they tell you that this is somebody trying to hide their handwriting. I think this is the thing that I want you to go home with to understand. That is not the word delivery crossed out. That is a guy with a long gun, a man who is bound by another person behind him, and another figure with a camera taking his picture, and then something here that represents what we were able to find at a better visual picture of this note is actually topography. It's like Ontario, Canada. Albert Lee Terry Jr., Friar David Collins. This is his work. And his work is in the Nancy Guthrie ransom note. His work is in the JonBenet ransom note. He was a Zodiac member. That's not delivery, right? And I'm going to show you one more thing. So remember, like, people argue about whether there was an intruder or not. Let's see, this picture is kind of whacked out. I actually have one that's really nice on my desktop, but I don't think I have time to go find it. I don't know exactly where it is, but I would love to find one of these that's a little cleaner. Oh, this is the one. Man, God, he is amazing, or she is amazing. This is definitely the one. Let's put this on our desktop. All right. So we're going to get rid of that little bad boy. We're going to bring this guy up. Yeah, this is the one. So see right here? I'm going to flip this thing. And I'm going to bring this up because it's a lot cleaner. So the argument is, was there an intruder, right? That is a picture. I don't think we're going to mince words here. That is a picture. And what does that remind you of? What does that remind you of in the Nancy Guthrie case? It reminds you of Porch Guy. This is a dude all wrapped up. He's got a flashlight in his hand, right? He is gloved up. He is contained. This is before DNA, right? This is in the JonBenet Ramsey ransom note. And you see kind of like the face glass goggle right there. Well, that's the face glass goggle right there also. So if I spin this thing around and brought it back, that is him. And this word, if I took time to show you, is actually says represent, we can read it, is a map that takes you around the back of the house, into the house, up the stairs where the ransom note was made, up to the upper floor. It's saying, intruder, follow this path, up to the stairs to where JonBenet Ramsey's room was. And then there was a stairwell right here that went to the third floor to where the parents live. It's saying avoid that stair. And then there was a way through the kids' playroom. And then there's another door or stairway over here that actually goes down into the basement. And then this person is exiting out the window of the basement. This is a word used as a map, but also as a word within the paragraph, and a photo of an intruder whose face and body is represented within that letter as an instruction as to what to do. So when I show you coded lie big cards on eBay that match the wrench attack in Scottsdale and how it seems to have instructions for what those two young men were supposed to do, that has a history that goes back 30 years. In a letter that has a history that goes back 30 years from that, which is the Z340 Cipher. That's why I'm telling you, other than the fact that he also looks exactly like the self-drawn images he made of himself, that Albert Lee Terry Jr., remember the Zodiac who faked his death in 1971, is actually Friar David Collins, and that he is the mastermind of these events because he draws the instructions in code in the letters that are associated with these crimes. I'm using this one because it was found in the house, not on eBay, right? Not at the San Francisco Chronicle, on the stairs. Patsy Ramsey did not create this. The person that created this was not trying to hide their handwriting. They were using a Zodiac protocol where letters look like pictures and pictures look like letters to deliver multiple messages. The top message was for us, right? The internal message was for the people and the co-conspirators, giving them instructions on how to do what they need to do. And it takes just a little bit of training, like I'm doing with you right now, to get them in a position where they can read this. It's not that hard. It's Wheel of Fortune, right? And pictures. Everybody can read pictures. That's why they changed a lot of the street crossing signals to images so that anybody in any language would understand walk and don't walk. It is simple. It is genius, right? That is exactly what it is. So we're going to go with R as arithmetic and just go with the KBO on that thing, right? And I just showed you that pictures are letters and letters are pictures. But I'm going to end, if I can. Now, this is going to be a little bit difficult because I don't have the database in front of me. But I do know where to go find it so that I can make this a lot easier for you. And I'm going to, forgive me for going to something that I created, but it's just where I know where it is. So what is the name of my website? Yeah, there we go. Let's see. Bingo. Okay, so this is not a promotion. It's what I want to show you. So Albert Lee Terry Jr. I keep telling you about this name, a person you probably don't know unless you're familiar with my work, that he was part of Zodiac, and I'm going to show you how I can prove that. So there was this guy who faked his death in 1971. He looks just like Friar David Collins in some self-created portrait images embedded in communications that are associated with crimes like the Paul Stein murder and Cherry Joe Bates murder. But in what's called the Z408, right? Is this the Z? Which one is this? Yeah, this is the Z408, not the Z340 Cipher. Right here in the last bracket, at least how it was set up. So remember, each piece was sent to a different newspaper. One was the Chronicle, the Times, and something else, right? So I'm not exactly sure which position they should be in, but this one was in the bottom of the picture that I got. There are these symbols right here. So a lot of people over the years have taken this GYKE, like when you look at History's Greatest Mysteries, and said Geik, and then there was some guy whose name kind of sounds like Geik, and then they just they just start making up stuff about how he's the Zodiac, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I don't really know what that is right now. I don't remember decoding it, but you see where it says TYA, and then a couple of symbols, and then there's an L and a space. In Vallejo, in a 1968 version of the telephone book that we found from an archives that we got off of a link that was on the Zodiac sub on Reddit, which is really hilarious. Downloaded it, right? And because we solved another code of the Zodiac where we got a phone number from a math problem that looked like letters and numbers that we knew were set up in a certain way to do math, just like I did pi times 9 times pi with the R for arithmetic, right? So we knew that they used arithmetic. We got a phone number, this phone number right here. We went and said most of the murders were committed in Benicia, which is in Vallejo. And where we got the math problem, in big letters, it said Vallejo. So we went to the Vallejo phone book and we found this listing on 1906 Tulumi Street, however you pronounce that word, right? And the corner of Delmar Avenue, which was right down the street from the phone booth that Zodiac called and left the phone off the hook, right? When he called the police to report a murder or a double murder, right? Was this address right up the street and matches the timelines that were approximated to a T. There was a person who was listed in the book as Terry Al L. Jr. So that's Albert, Al, but it was listed as Al. For 60 years in his communications, especially when I tried to show it to you in the Joan Benet Ramsey stuff or the Nancy Guthrie stuff, right? That the AL is for Albert or the L is for Lee. And in FBI documents, it's how he signed an application to get into the witness protection program in 1971 when supposedly he died. We know he didn't. His phone listing has always been a way for him to inject himself into the material that he's created. So in the 408, in this area, there are multiple people that are declaring themselves zodiacs, and they're putting their ranks, their names, their nicknames, and their positions in the military in here as a member of the revolutionary group Zodiac that is running Plan Z U-boat that are keep buggering on and dropping HH88 as validation. This is what he used. So remember, they're plain text, they're not transposed, they're Wheel of Fortune. You just get some letters missing and you got to figure it out. So Terry is Terry. So he put TY. So there's the T, the Y. You could buy a vowel if you want to, but that's Terry. And then Al, he uses the A for the A, right? And then the L is used double. So maybe this is saying use the L twice. I'm not positive, but that's possible. So it's Al, L, and then L. And then this little symbol we think is either the J or just Junior in itself. So Terry, Al, Jr. Albert Lee Terry Jr. was a member of the Zodiac. That's not coincidence. That's called code breaking. The only thing that's missing here that I wish was here, which I think was here at one point. Oh, wait. I might have it. Hold on. You know, we're getting there. We just might. Could that be it? It's a partial. Yeah, bingo. So this was the link from zodiacciphers.com, right? I forget who owns that site, right? Is that the one that David works with, or is that the one, the guy in Oregon, or the guy who no longer, it might be the guy Mike somebody or whatever. I just, oh, right, here's your boy, right? So it's Ptolemy Street, right? That's the connected street. He's on the corner of Delmar Avenue and Ptolemy Street, right there on the corner. 1906, Terry Al L. Jr. And that was the number that we got from cracking the arithmetic code that was left on the Carmen Gia of Brian Hartnell, where Cecilia, I forget her last name, was murdered. So one of the reasons that the guy at Lake Berryessa may have wore a costume was because that murder was supposed to take time. And the reason why he was talking to them and tying them up was to give Albert time to write the code on the car door. So we've always assumed that it was a single person, that he killed them, ran to the car door, wrote the thing on the door, and then split. What we're telling you is there were two people there. There was this dude named Charlie that we've identified who looks exactly like the person of interest of the guy who was lurking there all day for like 9 hours, who like 8 witnesses saw and described to a T, with the part in his hair, handsome. We know exactly who he is. He was the one that put the bag on his head and was just wasting time while Albert was over there lining up that message on the car door in what was called new math in the 60s, in a column form, in order to form the mathematical problem, of which when we were kids was called word problems, where you got words that suggested numbers and then you worked those numbers. So the dates and the times on there of the murders were specific to give you this phone number, which is probably why one of the things Charlie said to them was, "I'm sorry, but I have to do this." And why he probably spent 9 hours there all day, because they needed that date in order to complete the mathematical problem so that whoever that code was meant for knew what phone number to call. It was probably part of the whole extortion. They were trying to communicate with people that were in the military and in the government in Washington, D.C. without calling them on the phone, right? Or sending a letter. And people in intelligence who could read that code. And they literally gave them a phone number to call so that they can give them their demands. And that phone number was our guy, Terry Al Jr. He's still alive. His name is Friar David Collins, ex-pastor, St. John Apostles in Kingston, Ontario. And I believe that he is the individual who masterminded the kidnapping and probably now the murder of Nancy Guthrie. And they're saying in the code that she's buried, or her bones have been, if they haven't moved them or ever put them where they've been talking about, is in the St. Thomas More Catholic Church on the campus of the University of Arizona. That's my presentation.
Alright, so I've never wanted to do this, right? Because I've never wanted to become just one of the regular people out there that